Welcome back to the ETF Inspector. It's Tuesday, September 30th, a little after 6:30 at night, and this is our daily recap video for ULTY, LFGY, and SLTY. They are YieldMax funds, Ultra Option Income Strategy Fund, Crypto Industry Fund, and the Ultra Short Option Income Fund. Reminder, I'm on X at ETF_Inspector1. I'll let you know when videos are coming out, repost distribution announcements, and everything similar to that. You might hear a little extra background noise. I decided to record outside since it's a beautiful September night and the weather's just perfect. So sorry if you hear a little bit of extra nature in the background. All right, markets seemed like they were going to move down this morning, and then some of them kind of made a recovery at the end. ULTY ended up flat for the day. LFGY was down just slightly, 0.05%, and SLTY was the only one that actually made any type of movement upwards, 0.35%. I'm hoping all the noise in the background's not too much, drowning me out, but if it is, I just won't do it again. But all right, so we get started with ULTY, the trades first. Starting off, we're closing out and rolling, still staying within the same week, but just adjusting strikes. As far as a firm, that brought in $3.3 million. Bullish, this is just adjusting of the puts because the puts became very valuable. So they adjusted the strike, that brought in $715,000. Bitmine immersion, closing the sold strike on the call and adjusting it closer to the money, resulted in a credit of $666,000. Same thing for Figma, resulted in a credit of $228,000. Same thing for Hims and Hers, credit of $400,000. Hood apparently went right through their strike price, so had to close that and adjust to a much higher strike price. That cost $10.5 million. That's going to ruin our trading day right there. Quantum computing, just adjusting the sold calls, not the puts. Credit of $595,000. Rigetti, adjusting those strikes on those sold calls a little closer, $455,000 credit. Rocket Lab, this is similar to, which one did we just say for the puts? Bullish. Rocket Lab did the same thing, sold the puts that had become very valuable and bought ones a little further out of the money. $3.1 million credit. NewScale Power, just the sold calls were adjusted to a closer strike, $390,000 credit. And same deal with Unity Software, resulting in a $1.1 million credit. So all in all, it was a credit. It was a positive day, $581,000. But if it wasn't for Hood's negative $10.5 million, it would have been a very nice trading day. Overall, the value of our underlying shares dropped by nearly $4.8 million. So we'll go through quickly and see what happened there. Affirm was down 4.5%. All positions were closed and rolled. Bullish was up over Bullish was up over 2%. The only thing they adjusted was their furthest in the money puts. They have calls sold that are anywhere from 1.7% in the money to 6.9% out of the money. Bitmine immersion was down 2.27%. Again, they've got calls sold anywhere from 3.8% in the money, but don't worry about that. There's only 41 contracts there. 5,000 and 14,000 contracts out of the money, 6.7 and 10.5%. Coinbase was up just over 1%. That did take their calls into by 0.75%. CoreWeave, 11.7% increase, makes them the big winner of the day. They did go into the money 5% on those 130s and 0.6% on those 136s. So they got to capture a nice portion of that increase today, resulted in an $18 million increase in value of the shares. I believe they get a deal with Meta. I know I saw something quick about it. $14 billion deal with Meta. There's just about $669 million in First American government obligation funds and 71 million in cash. We like to call that dry powder. Comes to 740 million, but we do need some money for those put spreads. Collateral 22, almost 23 million is kind of earmarked for that. Figma was down 2.4%. They've still got calls 6% out of the money. The further ones got closed and rolled. First Solar down 1.3%. Calls are 3% out of the money. Galaxy Digital, this is one of those put spreads we talked about. They're now 8+% out of the money on those sold $31 puts. They're looking pretty safe. May even see them adjust them midweek to take some profit. Hims and Hers was down over 4%. Furthest out of the money positions were closed and rolled to a closer strike. They still have 57s and 60s, 0.5% and 5.8% out of the money. So really those 57s were in the money before today's drop. Robinhood up 4.7%. They were already pretty far in the money and went even further. They closed and rolled those, and their 137s also went into the money by 4+%. Lululemon's got that put spread, selling the 180s. They are actually in the money by 1.1% with the closing price under 178. MP Material Corp was down 1.6%. 71s are 5.8% out of the money on those calls. Strategy down 1.29%. 327.50s are 1.6% out of the money. Open Door, this one's had a wild ride, so we're back in the 7s again with the 2.8% decrease. They've got calls sold 6.6 and almost 13% out of the money expiring Friday. Palo Alto Networks still just barely out of the money by 0.5% on those 202.50 puts. Palantir was up just about 2%. That did take their calls into the money by 1.3%. No action was taken though. Pony AI down 1%, still in the money by 2% on the 22s and out of the money by 2% on the 23s. Quantum Computing was down 2.3%. All the sold calls were closed and rolled to closer strikes. Looks like they do have puts that are in the money, so they are becoming valuable. They'll help offset some of the loss there, or the decrease in value. It's not a loss unless you sell the shares. Rigetti Computing up almost 0.5%. They closed and rolled those 33s to a closer strike. 32.50s are still 9% out of the money. Rocket Lab was up 1.9%, just barely out of the money on those 48s at 0.1%, and 50s are still 4.3% out of the money. They did take some profits on those puts that had become nice and valuable. Rocket Companies, 3.7% decrease, makes them 5.7% out of the money on those sold calls. New Scale Power down 5.7%. They closed the further out of the money calls. They still have 30,000 plus contracts at 39, 8% out of the money. SoundHound AI up 2.5%, still 2.6 and 5.7% out of the money on those sold calls. Symbotic up 0.33%. They've got calls sold that are 2% out of the money and puts sold that are 16.5% out of the money. Tesla, this is the fourth and final of the put spreads, the put credit spreads, and this one is currently out of the money on those 432.50s by 2 3/4%. Unity Software was the big loser today, down 6.9%. They did adjust those calls to a closer to the money strike. And finally, Upstart just keeps dropping. I want to say, were they in the 70s within like a week or two ago? Yeah, September 19th, they were 71. Now they're 50. Down 3.6%, 20% out of the money on those sold 61s. We'll probably see them getting adjusted tomorrow unless there's a big pop. That's how we had a almost $8 million decrease in value of our underlying shares. Assets under management for ULTY, 3.3 billion, 3.38. So we're getting close to that 3.4. A lot of people sold out of the fund yesterday. 7.3 million outstanding share decline, bringing us to 617,525,000. The NAV at the start of the day was 548. Our closing price was 547. And really, that's all we got on ULTY. Next, we'll go to LFGY. We're combining them today just because there's not really a whole lot to talk about to make it its own video. So trades-wise, all they did was adjusted their sold calls on Hood. After Hood went up, we just talked about it, so that cost them $1.3 million, and they went ahead and made a full adjustment on their call spreads they have on NVIDIA. That cost $119,000 for a total of $1.4 million loss or negative or debit on options trading. There was also a $1.1 million decrease in the value of the underlying shares. Bitmine was down 2.2%. Calls sold are still 10.5% out of the money. BitDeer was down 1.2%. They've got calls that are 0.5% in the money and 8% out of the money. CleanSpark was down 2.5%, but they're still in the money by 3.5% on their sold calls. Coinbase up 1%, took their 335s into the money by 0.75%. Core Scientific up over 3.5%, took their 1750s into the money by 2.5%. Circle Internet Group down 0.8, 5.6% out of the money on those sold 140s. iShares Ethereum Trust ETF down 0.2%. They are almost 8% out of the money on those sold $34 calls. Much less money dry powder wise over here. First American Government Funds only $357,000, and cash and other $950,000. Galaxy Digital was down 1.4%. Their calls sold are 13.8% out of the money. GameStop up 0.25%. Unfortunately, they were already in the money to start, so that now they're 1% in the money on those $27 calls. Robinhood Markets was the big winner, up 4.7%. They went ahead and closed and rolled these. They were, like we said, already deep in the money, so they did not really, realistically, they wouldn't have gotten to capture any of that increase, because for every penny that the share price went up, the cost to close out those options went up right along with it. Hut 8 Corp down 0.1%. $39 calls are 12% out of the money. iShares Bitcoin Trust ETF up just barely 0.05%. No options there. Mara down 2.1%. $19.50 calls are 6.8% out of the money. MBTX has a call credit spread sold for this week, where the price needs to stay under 265 to win the trade. It's at 270.55, so that's 2% in the money. They also have a put debit spread, so they purchased the 255, so the more it drops, the more valuable that purchase will become. That's currently 5.7% out of the money. Mercado Libre was the big loser today, down over 6.5%, taking them 6.7% out of the money on those sold calls. Strategy was down 1.2%. They are 5.5% out of the money on sold 340s. NU Holdings was up 0.33%. That just barely took them into the money by 1 cent. They got $16 calls sold. Price closed at $16.01. NVIDIA Corp up 2.6%. All positions closed and rolled. Opera was up 0.88%. $20 calls are 3% in the money. $21 calls are 1.7% out of the money. They really don't matter, though. It's 23 contracts compared to 4,300, and those are out till 2 weeks from Friday, 10/17. PayPal Holdings down 3.76%. That did bring these back out of the money by 1.4% on those $68 calls. Riot Platforms down 3.79%. It's a good thing some of these didn't get closed yesterday, because with these drops, that's going to make them much cheaper. So even with the drop, they're still almost 2.8% in the money on those 1850s. Very small portion compared to the larger 6,300 contracts at 2250 that are 18% out of the money. Block finally down over 4%, 6.5% out of the money on those sold $77 calls. So that is how we had a change in market value of negative 1.1 million on the underlying shares. Yesterday we thought we were going to break 200 million. We just barely stayed under it, 199 million assets under management. So then after today's drop, it will be even further away unless a decent amount of people bought into the fund. There was no changes yesterday, so still 5,450,000 outstanding shares. NAV at the start of the day 36.56, closing price at the end of the day 36.41. I would say last but not least, but probably last and least, SLTY. There's way less people in it, much smaller fund. So only traded Bloom Energy today. They bought to close 2 of their sold put strikes and adjusted them to closer to the money. So that resulted in a $5,273 credit. So that is the overall for the day, since it was the only trade. And their shares actually dropped by 89,000 in value. So it is kind of surprising that they were positive. Now I think I don't know if I updated this or not. I always forget, since it doesn't do an automatic pull. So 42.80, I did not yet. So it's hard to say if they made 5,000 and decreased by 89,000. Why in the world they went up today? But they did. So I don't really have an explanation. Some people might think, oh, money coming in, but money coming in just keeps the average the same. If you buy 1 million more shares at 42.55, it'd be 42,550,000. The math would still divide out to be exactly the same NAV. So money coming in or going out doesn't really affect the share price. It's really the value of everything within it. So Astera was down 1.5%, which is good because these are shorted shares, so that made the value increase. The thing that hurt was Bloom Energy going up 14.96%. That's why they closed and rolled those to closer strike. That's what beat us up for the day, dropping our value by 176,000. BitDeer was down 1.27%. They've got puts sold 6% out of the money and calls 17% out of the money. Circle Internet Group down 0.8. Again, down helps. So they're still 3.5% out of the money on those sold puts. Duolingo down 2.1%. Puts are 2.9% out of the money. Enphase Energy down 1.9%. Puts are still 1.1% out of the money. Don't really highlight the government funds in this one because way more money has to be held back, because you basically start out by selling shares of everything. So we have negative shares. We're going to have to always have money on hand to buy them back. The majority of it sits up here in treasuries, but I never know how to account for if any of this other money is dry powder or not. So GitLab down 3.78%. They're the biggest decreaser on the day, so that's a lot of help, increasing the value by 44,000. And they got to capture that whole move because the puts still are out of the money just barely by 0.18% or 8 cents. Lemonade down 1.5%. They've got puts sold that are 6.5% out of the money and calls sold. Those calls sold are to help pay for the protective calls. This is a reverse strategy or opposite strategy of ULTY. So those calls are 15.8% out of the money. Mara down 2.14%. Sold puts are still 4% out of the money. Nebius Group was up 1.8%. They've got puts sold at 103 and 106. They're 5.5 and 8.25% out of the money. RH was up 2.6%. Even with that, those puts are still in the money by 2.1%. Symbotic was up 1/3. Puts are 8% plus out of the money. And Tempest AI was up 2.7%, leaving their sold puts 5.8% out of the money. So that is how our market value of our underlying shares dropped by $89,000. Kind of already talked about it. 14.8 million assets under management, 350,000 outstanding shares. NAV at the start of the day, 42.55. For some reason, SLTY does trade at a premium where ULTY really doesn't. I'm not sure why, but in any case, that's all the information I've got for you. So I got a dad joke of the day before I let you go. You deserve it after listening to me. I got that video through pretty quick, 20 minutes of reading off numbers. So thank you for watching. Appreciate all the likes, shares, and comments, all the support. And so here is your reward, your dad joke of the day. What do you call a zombie that stir fries? A dead man walking. All right, good night. Good luck trading tomorrow, and I'll catch you in the next video.